Last year, during that lush green summer, my friend and I reviewed and explained the cleverly designed dual sponge filter. At that time, we mainly focused on its principle and usage, but we didn't specifically test its bacterial cultivation and oxygenation abilities, which I now feel a bit regretful about. We also mentioned another in-tank filtration device that looks quite similar to the dual sponge filter, but it actually operates as a water pump rather than utilizing the airlift principle like the dual sponge filter. So how does this water pump style in-tank filter perform? And what about the actual bacterial cultivation and oxygenation abilities of the dual sponge filter? We've just acquired an internal filter with the same filter box capacity as our dual sponge filter. So let's do a comparison experiment. We prepared two 30 x 30 x 30 centimeters aquariums, each filled with 20 tarn of water, equipped with 100 W heaters, set to 26 DU4C. We placed 40 ml of quartz ball media in both the internal filter and the dual sponge filter, installing them in the two experimental tanks. We added 4 clownfish to each tank, feeding them equal portions each time. By monitoring water quality, we assessed the cycling progress, and once the cycle was complete, we overfed to confirm the establishment of the nitrification system and its processing capacity. The results of the experiment are as follows. From the early changes in ammonia, nitrogen, and nitrite levels, we found that the nitrification system in the dual sponge filter tank developed faster than in the internal filter tank. After overfeeding, we observed that while the dual sponge filter tank had higher peak values for ammonia and nitrite, it returned to safe levels more quickly, indicating its nitrification system is faster than that of the internal filter tank. The oxygen levels in both experimental tanks showed a noticeable difference during the overfeeding test. In the internal filter tank, oxygen levels dropped to a dangerous level of 1.33 mg, LPPM, while the other tank remained relatively unaffected. For the rest of the experiment, the oxygen levels were nearly the same in both tanks. When people discuss the pros and cons of the dual sponge filter, they often mention that it doesn't suck in small fish and therefore has relatively poor waste removal capacity. However, the reason the dual sponge filter doesn't suck in small fish or settle debris is not because it uses airlift, but because it has low intake pressure. In other words, you can achieve a similar effect with a water pump if you modify it accordingly. The main difference between the dual sponge filter and a pump-style internal filter is that the dual sponge filter also aerates the water while circulating it. In this experiment, the oxygen levels in the tanks with the dual sponge filter and the internal filter were almost identical, which aligns with our previous results on oxygenation. However, in this experiment, overfeeding severely impacted the oxygen levels in the internal filter tank, meaning that bacteria were competing with the fish for oxygen, which caused the oxygen levels to drop to a dangerous level. This shows that, in addition to the previously mentioned issue of high stocking density, overfeeding is another situation that requires aeration. As for bacterial cultivation, the dual sponge filter did indeed show a relative advantage over the pump-style internal filter in this experiment. However, it's hard to determine whether this is due to its larger sponge surface area or the aeration improving the tank's microenvironment. Nevertheless, the results clearly show that the nitrification system in the dual sponge filter tank performed better, with the water quality returning to normal levels faster. Additionally, in this experiment, the filter media volume was only 2/100 of the total water volume. Based on our previous experiments with larger tanks, where a reduction to 3% of the water volume as filter media already led to noticeable impacts on processing speed, we can infer that other variables played a role. For such small tanks, the bacterial cultivation on tank walls, water pipes, and other surfaces, as well as the nonlinear relationship between the volume ratio of filter media and improvements in processing efficiency, may have contributed to the results. That wraps up this edition of Fishboy's experiment. As cycling-related experiments tend to have longer time frames, if you found this content interesting or useful, please don't forget to like, follow, and share. If you have any insights on this experiment, or if there's something you'd like us to test or explore next, feel free to comment or join our group discussion. Let's explore the mysteries of the aquarium world together. This is Fishboy. See you in the next episode.